the ego will be the sort of instrument that comes with this self-sabotage, which is why when you find love, you are self-sabotaging, because remember, you don't love yourself and you're expecting love to come from external. And of course, I mean, there's no human being who can fulfill your need for love. This whole issue of feminine and masculine energy, we really have to go back to Jung, because even at work, we have this toxic masculine environment, right? Where the feminine energy is not allowed to come in, because the workspaces were created around, men and their masculine energy. So when women lead with their feminine energy, they are seen to be, weak. Men have been conditioned to believe that they are not nurturers. And we have a broken society because men are not able to express love to their children. And they have to be tough and all of that. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have, those who discipline and those who bring some softness and love. But they go to the extreme where the children are broken because they never saw their father expressing love to them.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Safe Space, brought to you by Tsogang Batung. I'm your host, Tato Pule. Welcome to the show. So for today's episode, we will be focusing on a passion of mine, a major belief of mine. In terms of the issues that we're facing today as the youth, the solutions are going to be youth-led and come from the youth mostly. But we're not going to solve all of them without a strong intergenerational alliance where we can have productive and constructive conversations with the older generations to learn from them, to avoid certain mistakes and possibly skip certain traumas that we can just shortcut by having a conversation with someone who's been around for a longer time. So last year I was at the YLC book club event, and it was the launch of Mam Nonkululeko Gobodo's book. I just remember sitting in the crowd and being so inspired. In sharing her life story, she said nuggets that I would like to share with you guys on this platform today. Welcome to our guest, Mam Gobodo. Thank you for honoring this invite. I know you're very busy, and I think it shows the commitment that you have to the youth as well in order to inspire us and invigorate us. So I know about you. I've read your book, but can you just introduce yourself to our viewers and tell us a little bit about your life story?
Thank you, Tato. Well, I'm so happy to be here today. I remember after the event, we had those passionate conversations just outside the venue, and I could taste and feel your passion. And then I think we had an intimate mentorship session. Even there, I tested your passion. Well, I'm Mam Nonkululeko Gobodo, and I hail from the Eastern Cape, from Tata. I was born there and started my life there, like everybody else. But eventually I found my path and started my studies towards a BCom degree, wanting to be a chartered accountant, which I achieved. But I mean, to start back, I grew up a very shy girl, very quiet, and my mother was really worried about this shy girl. And then she started to vocalize her fears. And as a 7-year-old, you're trying to make sense of these things that your mother is saying about you, and you start to believe that you are not going to make it in life, you're going to fail in life, because you can't comprehend what she's saying. Because I think she's trying to wake me up because she's worried about me. But of course, I mean, she just didn't understand my personality. I was completely different from my younger siblings, my older siblings, sorry. And then, I had a low self-esteem, didn't know who I was, pregnant at 17. And fortunately for me, my dad then said, go and work at that panel beating shop while you're figuring out what you want to do with your life. And that was a saving grace, because that's where I found myself. And I realized then that I was not this person that I grew up believing I was, because I was taught bookkeeping and I grasped this bookkeeping thing quickly. And then there were two white guys there who were bullying everybody. It was apartheid South Africa. Get there and the guy says, what's your name? And I say, I'm Nonkululeko. Oh, that's too difficult. I'm just going to call you Mary. I'm like, what? You will do no such thing. You will call me by my name, write it down, practice it, and all of that. And then I realized I'm actually strong. You know, kuthiwa unyabile, you are shy. So you believed that. Here was I, standing up to these bullies. That's where I found myself. And then, fortunately, that's where I found my path as well, because I was exposed to the profession of chartered accountancy and auditing. And I was able to go back to school and finish my matric and study towards a CA. You know, that whole experience of not knowing who I am made me so focused. First of all, I mean, when for a long time you didn't even know what you wanted to do, we are listening to whatever your parents were saying you should be, and then you find for yourself what you want to do. It just boosts your self-confidence. And because I allowed my mother and other people, because everybody would talk about this shyness and this quietness, and you can imagine you don't see yourself, so you don't see what they're talking about. And then, therefore, after that, I vowed that I would never allow anybody to define who I am. So when I started working, I was very clear. Apartheid South Africa, you know, you get exposed to sexism and racism for the first time. And I was very clear that your opinions of me do not define who I am. You don't even know me. So I never allowed that environment to define me. And therefore, I never really experienced that, you know, what people talk about in corporate South Africa, because I charted my own path. I opened my own opportunities when I was doing articles. And then I went to work for the Transkei Development Corporation, where I started as an internal audit manager. Within 3 months, I was promoted to CFO at 29 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, you know, while you are there, you still have this dream of opening your own accounting firm one day. And it's amazing how history opens the way for you. Because it was that time of the military government, and the soldiers were just treating us so badly as educated executives. That was like, it is time now to go and pursue my dream. I then started my firm. I mean, you're 32 years old and you have this dream and you're excited, but you soon realize that, the shy Nonkululeko is not going to survive here. You've got to start marketing your business if you're going to succeed. And the responsibility of not just taking care of yourself, but taking care of employees and clients and all of that. You just have to grow up very quickly. But my firm grew into 2 partners and 30 staff in a short space of time.
Whoa.
Because at some point I got this agitation. I didn't leave my executive position to just be servicing small clients and running a small firm. And when you have that agitation, dreaming bigger, where are the big jobs that I thought I would do? And soon an opportunity opened in government where we got a big opportunity, which is why we grew to 2 partners and 30 staff. And then I opened another office in Bisho in the Eastern Cape. But again, that agitation comes. I've climbed this mountain. Where is the next mountain to climb? which is when I moved to Johannesburg and started Gobodo Incorporated, which then by that time we had partnered. Now we had 10 partners and about 150 staff. But I mean, you are there for a while. I mean, opportunities were opening for us. It was post 1994, and we really took advantage of those opportunities coming together as Black firms so that we could do bigger things. And then, of course, after 15 years, and Stella Stau having, opened those doors for us and having grown to medium-sized Black accounting firms, that agitation comes again because the international accounting firms were complying with BEE now. We were starting to take steps backwards as Black firms. So I encourage our guys again to come together. So we came together and we started merger negotiations with Sizwe Ntsaluba, which turned out to be Sizwe Ntsaluba Gobodo in 2011. That's when we saw the biggest Black accounting firm, which became the 5th largest at the time. And I mean, I had always had this dream of proving to myself and others that as a Black woman, there was nothing I couldn't achieve. And I achieved that beyond anything I could have dreamt. And such a sense of fulfillment. So when I retired from the accounting profession, I had nothing more to achieve in that space. So I wrote my book in 2020 during COVID, Awakened to My True Self, because I had this sense that I wasn't finished. And there is this thing that I want to do, and until I realized that what I really wanted to do was to awaken people to their true selves, contributing towards gender and racial inequality. Because we're forever going to be complaining about the slow pace of transformation. Who can really champion our transformation better than ourselves? So I want to encourage Black people and women to find their true selves so that they can start functioning from their authentic power. And God is good because I was ushered into a new era of my life. Everything is just exploding all around me. I'm chancellor of Walter Sisulu University. My book is exploding, doing very well, really impacting young people as I wanted. Because in the book, I wanted to be open and honest so that when young people go through difficulties, they would know that, they can also make it. I'm launching a podcast called Unconditioned Mind
I can't
in
wait.
November. Yes.
Yay.
That is a really exciting project for me. Yes, Tato. That's
Thank
the introduction.
You for that brief introduction. And I do urge that the viewers buy the book because obviously Mam Nonku summarized it a lot. But then hopefully in the questions that I'm about to ask you, you'll just give us a bit more context. So you first mentioned that as a young girl, you experienced certain difficulties, right? And later in your book, you actually go back and reprocess how you were raised and the experience that you had with your mother. You say it's trauma. You say it was a traumatic experience. So I just wanted to know, what people out there, they don't know that they experience childhood trauma. Like, they're just living their lives, perhaps seeing certain behaviors or not even moving or self-sabotaging. How were you able to reflect on that? How did you say, okay, I suffered from childhood trauma?
Of course, I didn't know anything about childhood trauma. As far as I was concerned, I just knew that something was not right because I would make mistakes in life and repeat those mistakes over and over again. And of course, I mean, you always blame others for the challenges that we face in life. And I was doing the same thing, thinking that people don't understand me and, they must just accept me as I am. Until at some point you realize that something is wrong and you need to deal with it. And the focus in the beginning was really about the fact that people didn't understand me. When I was young, I was being criticized for being shy and quiet. Later on in life, I was being criticized for being a strong leader. So I was like, okay, I can't keep complaining about people not understanding me when I don't understand myself. So I started that journey of self-discovery. Like everybody else, started taking my psychometric test, seriously, started reading about personality types. And that was really quite a self-revealing journey when I began to understand my own personality. Now, but there was still something not right. I was still not okay internally. And I was determined to find what that was. So I continued to study books. And then I decided, to pursue a spiritual path that would perhaps help me with understanding that. I didn't opt for therapy, I suppose, because we're the older generation. We didn't really think therapy was important, but I would encourage, especially the younger generation, to take these things seriously. And if you feel you need therapy, to go for it. And so I continued on my own path of healing and self-discovery. Then an event happened when I broke up with a boyfriend at the time. Not boyfriend, really. I didn't quite date, but I was just exploring with someone, but it was going the same direction all the others were going. And that bothered me. I was like, I felt rejected again. Because again, you always blame the other person. But it was out of that experience that I realized that I do suffer from rejection, because I felt rejected by my own mother at the time. And this anger that I had was coming from that rejection. So I started, the journey of healing the rejection, which was a journey in itself, because you start with all the normal emotions of, blaming and anger and all of that, until you realize that no one can really reject you, unless you enable it and allow it. And so I have to deal with myself and find healing for my rejection. And then the whole issue of childhood trauma came later in my healing journey, when that inner child started to voice herself. It was just an amazing experience, because I was doing affirmations about loving myself and so on and so on. And that child just came through as angry as if the whole trauma happened yesterday. That 7-year-old coming through, that 11-year-old that was traumatized coming through. At that time, I didn't know what was happening, because you're a spiritual person, you can be guided right there, because I just started engaging with her. And by her coming through, I suppose someone will say, what do you mean? I just mean these thoughts and these emotions started coming through. And then I started talking to her gently and assuring her that, because she was saying, your mother never loved you, we never have favorite. So I was just trying to address that my mother did love me, she just didn't understand me, and so on. And by God's grace, I started, following week, a video dropped in my timeline about childhood trauma and healing the wounded inner child. Then I understood what was happening to me. And I just want to say, even as I was coming here, I was listening to Clement Nyatela's show, and he was talking about healing. And people were coming through, sharing their terrible stories about relationships with parents that are toxic, being raised by a mother who is broken. And it really hurts me to see this cycle of brokenness, coming through over and over again from one generation to another. And I'm saying, as parents at this time, I know that when I talk to young people, they wish they can have those conversations with their mothers.
Definitely.
And I want to say that as parents, we need to understand that as much as we tried our best, we were broken, and therefore, we raised broken children. And we have to take the responsibility to heal ourselves so that we can walk the journey with our children, so that they can heal also. But I also want to say to young people that this blaming is not helpful, because I've healed a lot of relationships by starting with myself, healing myself. And toxic relationships I've seen them healed, without trying too hard once I started healing
Doing
myself.
the inner work.
Yes.
And thank you for sharing that, Ma. You also speak about in your healing journey, before we go there, I also went through the experience of seeing my inner child. And it was when I went through my healing process, it was a very tumultuous time. And there were multiple moments where I literally felt broken down. But eventually, I don't know what happened, but I was wondering, why am I a rational person, like most of the time, like 99.9% of the time, the real Tato, the Tato with genuine experiences who goes to therapy and understands. But there are those moments where self-destruction or self-sabotage becomes prominent. And it's like it took over me, and I didn't even understand where it came from until I saw that I'm abandoning that inner child of mine that stopped growing when my initial trauma happened in childhood. And I could just see this bruised and battered child who I've been focusing on the external world and doing good for other people. And I neglected them. And ever since then, I see them as part of my life, part of my healing journey. And, just the theory around the inner child has completely transformed or introduced another layer of my healing journey. You also speak about the ego, which is something that the inner child can act through, right? The ego, you say, makes people feel small. It tells you you're not good enough. And it's easy for it to do that when you have this child who's also looking for attention within you. Can you just share some of the learnings and your experience around that, your understanding of the ego?
Maybe let's just start on the wounded inner child as well. Because in my book, I give an example of how I just started to analyze this. Because I saw the wounded inner child as the roots of a tree that are informing everything. A tree has roots, it has a stem, it has branches. And we focus on the branches because they are the most visible, as we are sharing today. When you start, those self-destructive behaviors, sabotaging yourself, fighting with people, fighting with bosses, leaving jobs, sometimes even destroying your life, which is what I went through myself. And because we are focusing on the branches, that's why you never find the solution until you find the root, which is always that wounded inner child. And then what I noticed about that child is that they have this deep feeling, because they felt abandoned and they felt unsafe in the environments in which she grew up or he grew up. You have this problem of worthiness. You feel like you are not worthy of anything good. You are not worthy of love. You are not worthy of success. You are not worthy of peace and all of those things, which is why the ego will be the sort of instrument that comes with this self-sabotage, which is why when you find love, you are self-sabotaging, because remember, you don't love yourself and you're expecting love to come from external. And of course, there's no human being who can fulfill your need for love, which is why those relationships, they end badly. I've seen a situation where someone is in a relationship with a really good man. I'll talk about women. And they're always complaining about this man. And I wouldn't understand why why are you complaining? I just see a good man here. Whereas you'll never find that fulfillment from a human being. You're always complaining, sabotaging this relationship until it ends. It's like that with success. Whenever you build something successful, that inner child and that ego will come in and sabotage and destroy everything, because you feel unworthy of love. So what you really need to do is go through that whole journey until you find that self-love and that understanding that you are worthy of love, you are worthy of success. It is part of the healing journey. And then you'll see those branches falling by themselves when you attend to the roots and the stem of this wound that you've been dealing with. So I would say, we've never really understood the ego, because we are two people. There is that ego that has been informed by your background, the challenges you went through in life, and society and the world. And there's that part of you that is the real you, the soul, the spirit, the consciousness that is aware in this world. So we live like these two people, as we're explaining, that why am I the rational Tato and then somehow I become the irrational Tato? Because you are functioning and operating from these two worlds or these two energies, let me put it that way. So the ego, unfortunately, besides the fact that it is wounded here, it is that what Martha Beck calls the reptile brain, because we used to need the ego when we're living in the wild, because life was dangerous there. You had to be alert of attacks all the time. You had to fight for food all the time. You had to protect yourself and all of that. The ego somehow is still functioning from that, which is why you're always fighting with people, because you think they are attacking you, which is why you always think you are small and unworthy, because you are always comparing and contrasting. And when the ego sees someone who seems more intelligent, more powerful, it thinks that I'm not comparing with that. Whereas you may even be more successful with that person. You may even be more successful than that person, for instance. And but the ego will always look at you as being the small one, needing validation, and always thinking in terms of lack, which is why we have all these isms in the world. Is because we live and believe in an economy of lack and shortage, because in the wild, we're always worried about lack and shortage. So there's a lot that informs the ego, and we still need to study the ego in ourselves and in those we're dealing with around ourselves. But we need this as part of this healing journey, as part of this spiritual path. We need to recognize ourselves when we are thinking from the egoic mind, which things like we have described, small, lack, I'm being attacked. And when you are thinking from your, what I would call your Christ mind, your true mind, your soul, which is, of course, rational, which is, of course, at peace with itself, and is able to succeed. You know, and you know, as Abraham Hicks says that, you know, when you come out of that self, the real self, and you are in your egoic mind, you can see by how you feel, by how you behave. So you need to be present and be more aware so that you can pull yourself back home, you know, where you know that you're safe and secure, that you have no need, there's abundance in the world, no one is attacking you. I mean, who can attack you? You're a powerful soul, and so on. It's a journey, and we should not despair, because you would think that I've got it, and then boom, something happens that shocks you. I thought I dealt with that. Don't get discouraged. Continue on the path, because you are growing, you know. We just blow up those moments out of proportion, but you are growing, you know, as a person. And I don't think we can ever perfect it while we're still here on earth, but the important thing is to start the healing work.
Thank you so much for that, Ma. So just to take it back to your childhood as well, you had a child at 17, got married at 17, and at some point you were like, I'm going to be a CA. And this is during apartheid. Now, you know, even in democracy, somebody who fails matric, the world will say, forget about becoming a CA. Just give up. Whereas, like, there's so many opportunities to upgrade your matric, to, you know, really get it. So I just want to understand, and there have been moments also, like where you said you've hit rock bottom due to relationships that didn't go well. What drives you, like, especially back then, what leads through that change? What brings about the change within you and says, like, get up, try again?
Yeah. I mean, when you've been through a place where you don't even know who you are, you know, you have a low self-esteem, you think you're a failure, and you truly believe this about yourself, you never want to be there again. And so, you know, I got married and I had a child, and I was trying to, you know, do matric at the same time. I mean, it was impossible to do all of that. But that crisis in my life was just such a blessing, because, as they say, everything is turning out for our own good. Because then at that panel beating shop is where I found myself. I found what I wanted to do. I had clarity about my life and was able to go back to school. And once I found that strong, powerful Nonkululeko, you know, who was always driven, who had clarity about what she wanted to do, you begin to function from that authentic self. Although even when we talk about an authentic self, it is always evolving, you know, as you go through stages in life. And I remember when I wanted to start the auditing firm, how everybody around me was scared. My parents, the community at large. How are you going to compete with the big eight? Everybody was so scared for me, trying to discourage me. But I was just so determined. I had clarity that I wanted to start this firm and I wanted it to succeed. Others were saying, go and lecture part-time, at least, you know, so that we can survive. And I was actually very clear that I'm not going to lecture part-time, because if I lecture part-time, I'm not going to achieve what I want to achieve, which is building this big, powerful firm. So I was always driven. And you're asking, what is it that always drives you? I suppose, you know, the most important thing that I've always found is having clarity of vision. Because when you have clarity of vision, it drives everything. Even when you face challenges, it is the one that picks you up and says, remember, we have a dream that we're pursuing. Don't give up. Don't give up.
That
Because
inner voice.
that inner voice. I found that having clarity of vision is actually powerful, and committing to that vision. I mean, I remember when I was doing articles, I used to have a picture of this. They talk about visualization. I used to have a picture of this firm that I was going to start. It was a small firm, small building, 2-story building. I could see the placard at the gate, Gobodo House. But out of that vision, I had many offices in many towns bigger than that, right? Because the vision will come alive at some point and it will grow and expand. So, you'd ask now at my age, I'm starting something new, and I have the same vigor that I had when I started my accounting firm. Because, again, once you have that vision, it's just the driving force. And I suppose, you don't realize how strong we are, because people allow fear to dictate, what they do or what they can do or what they can't do. It's not because I don't have fear, but I never allow fear to take to me what I will do and what I will achieve. So I'm naturally just a driven person. And, when you are a leader, you have to take that seriously, because once you start something, you have to commit to it, and it is your responsibility to make sure that it succeeds.
Yeah, thanks for that lovely response. I also was just interested in finding out, so you committed to this big dream, but you were a mom as well. And I think, with societal standards, cultural standards, traditional standards, assigning women as the primary caregiver, even inside marriages, right? We committing to that dream and studying and your career ambitions, you'd still be expected to look after the children, all the way to single parenthood, where I saw a statistic actually last night on the news that 32% of households are headed by single parents and the father is present. So firstly, how do women deal with the guilt of having to prioritize their careers and ambitions over spending time with their children, not necessarily neglecting them, but sacrificing the time and bonding component? How do they process that?
Yeah, for me, that is a big one that I'm really focusing on, gender inequality at Awakened. Because remember that the society defined these two roles, that the women are the caregivers and the men are the breadwinners. And in the past 100 years, that has changed. Women are not just caregivers, they are also breadwinners. But now we are all conditioned around these roles. We are conditioned to believe that women are the caregivers, and men are conditioned to believe that they are the breadwinners. And for me, these are just skills. Caregiving, domestic responsibilities are just skills that anybody can learn. And so it is actually unfortunate that our men have been conditioned to believe that they are not naturals. And as Carl Jung said, we both have the feminine and the masculine energy within us. So the natural is in everybody. And I've seen that in my own home, for instance. So this guilt is coming from the fact that women have been conditioned to believe this is their responsibility. And they also believe that, which is why they feel guilty. And I ask myself that women have to diminish their own ambitions because they have this responsibility that society says it is your responsibility. But men are allowed to dream as far as they can because women are carrying this big responsibility for society. And men do not feel guilty about the fact that women are sacrificing for them to fulfill their dreams. Men don't feel guilty about the fact that they are being helped to provide for the family. Because remember, the woman is now also providing for the family. And now women, on the other hand, feel guilty. And the sad thing is that they were never recognized for the responsibility they took when they were sole caregivers. Now that they are also providers, remember, men were respected and had more value because they were providing. Now that women are providing, they are still not recognized for caregiving. They're still not recognized for the fact that they are also providers. And therefore, I say that cooking is a skill. Cleaning is a skill. Caregiving is something that you learn, that is within you, whether you're a man or a woman. Because in my own household, I've seen, for instance, how my son-in-law is all of those things. I'll come home and find him cooking or cleaning or hanging washing. He's the one who takes care of his daughter's hair because he was determined that my child's hair will not be destroyed like your hair was destroyed. Found a salon that uses natural products. He personally takes care. He is as much of a nurturer as my daughter to their daughter. My other son was divorced, stays 50% with the children. 1 week there with him, 1 week there with the daughter-in-law. And that week, who's nurturing? Who's taking care? Who's making sure that everything is done? The lunch is packed. The homework is done. The hair. When they leave the house, who makes sure that their hair is proper?
Their dad.
Their dad. So this is a whole conditioning of the mind, which is why I'm so determined to fight for this unconditioning of the mind, because it's spoiling everything for everybody, really, and robbing society of using our resources efficiently. Because when the playing fields are leveled, for instance, where this is society's problem, this cannot be the woman's problem to solve or a family's problem to solve. Remember, the whole structure of society is designed around women doing the unpaid caregiving work. So that's not the case anymore. So how do we restructure society so that, the fields are laid, the playing field is leveled, and both men and women are given equal opportunity to achieve as much as possible so that we can grow the economy, so that those who are outside the economy can come in. This is a serious problem that has to be solved. Cannot be solved by women alone. Everybody must come to the party to solve this problem. And it is not fair that women have to carry this burden and feel this guilt, right? Because when children are growing up, I'm not saying children will not need their mothers more than their fathers, right? But when they are growing up in an environment where the father is also seen as a caregiver, like I see in my own household, right? Then they don't feel so abandoned when the mother is not there. Because then when the father is there, he's equally as good a caregiver as the mother is. So you're sharing these responsibilities equitably. So what we want now is balance and equity.
What happens? So when you're in that relationship, the energies get mixed up. I don't know if you agree with me. And sometimes, as from the woman's side, you become more stronger and more independent, right? Which is less feminine. Like you have to be masculine during the day at work and, be so that nobody walks over you and you can actually get that senior position. And then at 5 o'clock, you have to go back home and be the nurturer and be the vulnerable one and allow your person to actually be the masculine. But do you think the money component like actually prevents it from being like that? Like perhaps maybe the male who now is out of their security way. Traditionally, they're taught the provider mentality, right? But now they're in a situation where they're not the provider. And in my opinion, I tend to see that they struggle with that. And the women also struggle with being aware that their energy is also shifting, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's all that conditioning. When you've been conditioned to believe that you are the provider, when your partner is earning more than you feel like a failure, right? And the sad thing is that people are gifted differently. You may be your wife may be more ambitious, for instance, may be the one who has more capacity to bring more wealth for the family. But because we've been conditioned to believe this, you find that even in those situations, the wife pulls back, and who suffers? The whole family. When the wife, the one who is more gifted to bring more wealth, is not allowed to bring more wealth because you have to make this man feel comfortable. This whole issue of feminine and masculine energy, we really have to go back to Jung, because even at work, we have this toxic masculine environment, right, where the feminine energy is not allowed to come in, because the workspaces were created around, men and their masculine energy. So when women lead with their feminine energy, they are seen to be, weak, and you don't get those promotions and things like that. So what they do is dig deep into themselves to find their masculine energy so that they can be respected at work. And the sad thing is that so everybody lives in this toxic environment, whereas if the feminine energy was allowed, there would be balance, just like there is balance at home. So we do need to understand that in the workspaces, we need both energies, just like we need a healthy home is created because they are both energies. And when it comes to the home, we really need to live from a place of awareness. The men have to also be aware that they can tap into their feminine energy and be naturals. Naturals at home. This whole issue is really sad for me because men have been conditioned to believe that they are not naturals. And we have a broken society because men are not able to express love to their children. And they have to be tough and all of that. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have, those who discipline and those who bring some softness and love. But they go to the extreme where the children are broken because they never saw their father expressing love to them. So we need to fix these things, right? Otherwise, we're going to have this brokenness that is at work, where people live from anxiety. They live with anxiety. They have to take anxiety tablets to survive in a toxic environment. Whereas once we're all conscious about the fact that we need healthy environments, for us to have healthy environments, we need both the masculine and the feminine energy in the workspace. So I would then say that, sure, it is a journey. We need to participate in the journey. At work, those programs, they have to stop being tick box exercises. At home, we need to have conversations with our partners around the kind of home we want to create for our children and the roles that we have to play, right? The fact that we have to recognize the fact that the role of women in the home has changed. And therefore, if you have a powerful wife, must she self-abandon when she gets home so that she can be very feminine? You have to accept your wife as she is. Just like she has to accept you as you are, right? Men don't have to abandon themselves. Anyway, even at the workplace, it's women and Black people who have to abandon themselves so that the environment is healthy, so that others are comfortable. The men don't have to self-abandon at home. It's only the wife or the partner who has to self-abandon. So I'm just saying we need to have these conversations at work
And in the home.
and at home so that we can start healing the home environment, so that we can start using our resources at home and at work effectively, and acknowledge that, like I was the more ambitious one at home, who was the breadwinner. If we just have had those conversations at that time, that maybe you need to help more with the domestic responsibility so that I can then do what I'm better at than you, bringing more wealth into the home. And women also, I must say that they need to be aware that they are also conditioned to believe the man should be the breadwinner. So they do look down upon a man who's not that breadwinner, who is earning less than you. Women also need to be aware that it's okay. You have a relationship. There's good and bad in the relationship. There's strengths and weakness between the two of you. You need to be aware of those strengths and weaknesses and how we use them in the home instead of judging each other.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mam Nonku. So yeah, shifting to the work that you do at Awaken Global, you mentioned that you have a strong focus on the individual, right? As part of the process of transformation. Can you just explain a bit more than that? Because people would think that protest is the main tool towards changing society. However, Awaken seems to be going through going for a different strategy with in terms of saying, let's start with ourselves.
Exactly. Because as I was saying, that we're complaining about the slow pace of transformation. And who can champion our transformation better than ourselves? So what I'm saying is that, yes, we've achieved a lot through activism and protest action. But we are not free. Women are still not free. Black people are still not free, because no one can give you freedom. You have to give yourself freedom. And how do you give yourself freedom? Is starting with yourself. Dealing with those issues of self-abandonment, right, that I spoke about. Recognize that you are not your true self at the workplace, because you have to fit into this stereotype of a woman or Black person. Because when you don't fit into that stereotype, then, you are harassed, you're not treated well, and you miss opportunities. So you opt for self-abandonment. And I'm saying, if you bring half of yourself at work, you can never achieve your full potential, right? And everybody's losing out. Because, it is when you function from your authentic self that and bringing your whole self, that we can expand this pie, We are willing to self-abandon because we get a piece of the pie, we get a seat at the table, but what we want is to expand the pie and bake more pies, right? And I always talk about the peasant mentality, the peasant mentality where, for instance, in the social change of the 17th century, the same peasants who were said to be inferior and poor and not sophisticated brought about the Industrial Revolution that expanded the pie for everybody. We want a change in South Africa. We want a growing economy. And we don't need another revolution. We just all need to grow up. Black, white, men, women, we just all need to grow up and start dealing with the issues, the real issues, so that we can solve our societal problems, so that we can function in a healthy, growing society.
Yeah, and I like what you mentioned when you said that, one of the drawbacks of protest action is it relies on the oppressor giving you freedom as opposed to your freedom coming from within. And it's very much what we believe here at Tsogambathong as well. Hence why we focus on consciousness building. Because, when your conscious changes, right, then you have a different worldview now. You can actually, see yourself outside of this system that you thought took all the power away from you. And what I like about your life journey is that, you spent the the earlier years of your life building yourself, I remember at some point you were even forced to come back to the accounting profession to build Sizwe Ntsaluba Gobodo. And now, you're at a stage where you want to give back, right? And, you're ready to come out with your story to come inspire the youth, as well as creating a space for us to be awakened to our true self. So, yeah, I just wanted to ask you as a closing question, as a closing remark, what words of advice would you have for the youth of today in terms of in terms of taking action and going through the journey of awakening?
Yes. The youth of today is living in sort of two worlds, raised by parents who lived through another era where there was no consciousness at all, right? And they come into workspaces where it's intergenerational again. Although I admire them for refusing to participate in these toxic environments where they are discriminated against or where they are not given equal opportunities. But they are frustrated because, they are dealing with parents who are not even prepared to open those wounds and start the healing journey when they are more conscious and appreciate the fact that we need to heal. And they come to a workplace where the boss used to be the boss, and the boss, used to dictate how things are done around here. And they won't have it, they won't have it because they know that they have a contribution to make. They know that we bring different gifts and talents to the workplace. And if you're not allowing all of those gifts to thrive, we cannot build anything. So I would say to them, you have to be patient with the older generation, right? And you have to sort of educate them because you have more awareness, you have access to more information than they had, right? And remember, put yourself in their place. They are not living in this world that you live in today. They are not aware of the kind of impact that they have on others. That mother who continues to be, a toxic mother is just broken, and doing the best that she can. Be patient in starting to have those conversations with her so that she can become aware of the kind of impact she had on you. Or that father who, was always so hostile and tough and not loving, so that he's aware of the kind of impact it had on you. And in the workspaces, I would say again, those intergenerational conversations need to start, so that we can begin to understand one another. Everybody has to change. We have to meet each other halfway, right? And at some point, we also have to understand that maybe, that older generation, there are things about them that we will never be able to change. And the older generation must appreciate also that the younger people that they are complaining about, they're bringing something new, something fresh in the workspace, and they have to create space for that also, so that we have healthier working spaces, because all we're doing now is just fighting and complaining about one another. To say you are laying a new foundation, you're building a new society, you're creating a new world, right? And at some point you will be the next generation also, and dealing with a new generation who may be more advanced than you, for instance. We can see even from our grandchildren, they are completely different from our children. The things that my young grandchildren say to me, or how they deal with things, you can just see that they are far much more advanced than us. They are far much more conscious than us. So the world is evolving, right? And so we must appreciate that we're living in a changing world. We need to be patient with each other. And as they always say in spiritual circles, it's going to take love. Let's do these things with love, with more understanding, dealing with ourselves first before complaining about the next person.
Thank you so much, Ma, and thank you for making the time to be with us here today. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Bye.